Okay, Jennifer, ready?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, I will go ahead and call this regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order for Monday, November 4th, 2024. It is 7:05 p.m. Thank you all for coming. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First Selectmen's report. A few things. So on Wednesday, October 23rd, I had a chance to attend the mental health first aid training that Allie Ramstack and others have worked on. It was a two-day program in the mornings of those 2 days and fully subscribed. I'd say there were 30 people that attended from all walks of life. And I got to say, I not only got a mental health first aid certificate as part of that, but I found a number of those things and points that they made in that very easy. One of the things that was striking to me was this idea that somehow when people suffer from mental illness that there are no symptoms or signs, or it's a surprise, or you never know. That's a false notion. There really is, if you're perceptive, there is something that you can see that will represent a change, and just having that brought to life as part of the meeting for me was a real eye-opener. So if you have a chance to sign up for that class, highly recommended. I got a lot out of it, and I think it's well worth everybody's time. As a parallel to that, later in the day, there was a program about loneliness, which again is another issue that is relevant to mental health. It was put on by an organization called the Collaborative to End Loneliness, and Deb Bibbins, who's the founder of that, asked me to come and kind of introduce the session. And it was interesting enough that I decided to sit through the whole discussion. And that's another thing that I think is endemic in this society, which is kind of funny given how connected we all are, but something that's pretty important to get our minds around as a mental health matter. As was discussed in the meeting, Senator Chris Murphy has spent a lot of time on this particular topic, and I think is one of the leaders in trying to address loneliness generally. He has had, I think, a lot of very interesting policy proposals on that. And we should stay connected with him. And so I'd just urge you to go and read some of the stuff that he's put out on all this. It's valuable, and I think is certainly relevant to mental health. Had a chance on the 26th to attend the Darien Fire Department dinner dance at the Shorehaven Golf Club. It was a great gathering, not just of the department, but multiple others from other departments, and really that entire community. Fortunately, my wife was out of town, and so no one got to see my absolutely appalling dance skills, although maybe they wanted to see that, I don't know. But if you paired that with kind of Monday, October 28th being National First Responders Day, it really was an opportunity to recognize just how important everybody in our first responder and emergency services departments and groups in town are, and just how many of those individuals are volunteers. And just it really is important that we recognize the efforts of those individuals, not only because they help keep us safe or protect us in the event of a disaster of any kind, but the fact that so many of them do that without pay, and they're volunteers. And it's, I think, a unique thing about Darien that we have so many people who do that. So again, on behalf of the town, I really appreciate everyone for what they do. I had an interesting field trip on Thursday last week. So this was the Clam Restocking. So there are clam beds out around really Darien, and the two that we went to were up in Scotts Cove. But Roger Freight has got a clamming boat that he does this work, and I learned a lot about that I didn't know. And I also got to go see how they would repopulate those clam beds, and it's not anything more than just dumping a lot of clams into the water. And so it was just, it was fun to see all that and to spend time with those guys and just learn more about that. But I really appreciate what those guys do, and the fact that that's a long-time family business in these parts, and it was great to see Roger out pursuing all of that. Last thing I'll mention is just what a success early voting has been in Darien. So as of the close of voting yesterday, voting was closed today because they're preparing for regular election day tomorrow, but as of yesterday, out of 15,716 registered voters in the town of Darien, 6,907 of you voted early voting as of that day. That's nearly 44% of the registered voters in town. If you combine that with the absentee ballots we've received to date, which is about 1,000, we've had more than 50% of the registered voters in Darien, they've already voted. And so thank you to all the volunteers who staffed our polls over those days that the polls were open. That was a ton of work, especially when you're down in one spot, down in 119 like they were. But 500, 384, 403, 246, and the last day there were 728 people who voted that day. Not a glitch, not a problem, not an issue, and that's because those guys worked so hard to make all that work. So a special thanks to our registrars of voters, also Eric Yostin, John Veazey, and everybody who made that such a big success. So thank you. If you have not voted, please make sure you get to the polls tomorrow. Election day, that is the last day for your vote to be counted. So that was all I had for my report. Board liaison reports. Marcy.
No update other than, glad that you attended the mental health training. It definitely is very successful and worthwhile for anyone to take it. I know that Allie is planning to do another one, so as soon as that comes out, we'll make sure that we let the board know and put that in our newsletter.
Terrific. Monica.
So at our last Board of Selectmen meeting, we voted to implement new rules for increasing access and allowing dogs on paved areas once all the corrective actions were taken, signage, cleanup, property repairs, those kind of things. So most of the work is now done, and we aim to have signage, garbage cans, and other final touches in place by next week, next week. So once all that's completed, Town Hall will make an official announcement, which will mark the effective date for the new rules. So looking ahead, we're really excited about our community outreach that is on November 16th, so please mark your calendars for that. And it'll start, it's November 16th is a Saturday, right? Will you double check
That's
that?
right.
Yep.
It is, okay. So the event will start with an informational session here at Town Hall, and then it will be followed by guided and self-guided tours later on the island. And our next meeting is this Thursday at 6 o'clock in 206, right here.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Sarah.
Thriving Youth Darien did not meet since our last meeting, but their next meeting does occur on Thursday, November 14th at 9:30 at the Darien Library. The Henley Homes and Royal Building Committee did meet on October 16th, and things are moving along. They're erecting steel and pouring slabs and getting exciting. The kids are making adjustments to their daily lives, and so are the teachers. And I think things are going well. No problems or issues so far. Our next meeting will be on November 20th at 6 p.m. But if you have any questions, let me know.
Have they started to track any change orders that have come up, or is it really too early for any of those to surface?
I think it's a little too early, but I don't know that we've had any. Do you know?
I have not signed off on
I don't think we've had any.
Okay.
Yeah, we've only had I think 5 pay-apps that we've approved, so we're
Early days.
Yeah,
okay.
early.
All right, very good. Anything else?
no. Thank you.
Jennifer, any public comments?
Not that we've received them.
Not that we've received. One day, maybe. Okay, new business. So first up for our new business today, a presentation and possible action on a redesigned town flag. Harris. Dick, stand right up there because the mic will pick up your comments there. And
the PowerPoint's down in the toolbar and you can pop it open. Yep, that one there.
Okay, how do I present?
There's a
Go
little-
slideshow.
There's a little screen down at the bottom. See the scale? Right down to the bottom. That. No, there. No, to the left.
This one?
No, it's to the left. That little screen. 1, 2, one more. There.
All right.
Ah,
There we go.
well done, John.
Thank you.
Not as good as they used to be. Okay.
Okay, so, good evening everybody. My name is Harris Cabana. I'm a senior at Darien High School and I live at 38 Old Farm Road, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about my initiative to possibly redesign the town flag. So over the last year, I have been researching, I've seen on the internet a lot of cool initiatives for states, cities, towns, and even countries changing their flag into more modern and new designs. Like, these are some of my favorite examples, like Tulsa, Oklahoma, had a great one. State of Minnesota, like a few months ago, just changed their town flag, or their state flag. and Reno had a great one too. So I think these are just some examples of what we could do, incorporating old design elements and making a new cool Darien flag for our town. So I reached out to John about this, and we've been meeting with Murray, a former Darien resident and a graphic designer, and I sent some initial sketches of what I thought we could do for her to make designs off of. So I started experimenting with the emblem, changing the background color, putting the emblem in the corner, getting rid of the emblem entirely, and incorporating new symbols like seagulls and Rings End Bridge. And so from these, Mary created 2 sets of 4 flag designs, and these are the first ones, and these are grouped by sort of design. So these ones have, instead of the emblem in the center of the flag, we put this sort of a new emblem with seagulls sort of flying towards the future, town of Darien, and we contrasted the green and the green leaves and the water sort of symbolizing the importance of land and water for the town. Towards the bottom there's dark blue, just sort of different things we could do for the flag. And then here's the second set of options where we tried to modernize and recolor the emblem. On the top right, there's one with this, the most different one. There's one with a sailboat with the water takes up most of the flag with the Rings End Bridge right in your face. And then we created that, but in an emblem form in the bottom left. So with these designs, I wanted to see public input. So I got about 30 people, friends, family, grandparents. I wanted to get every generation alive now, and I want to see their input on the flag. So I asked them to rate the flags on a 1 to 10 scale, 1 being they hated it, and 10 being it was the best design they've ever seen. And these up on the screen are the average flag, or the average out of 10 scores that each received. And the top one up there got a 7.6 average out of 10, and the bottom one right above the current flag got a 4.4. Interestingly, the current flag got a 2.9 out of 10. So just based on this select group of people, I think we could rally a lot of support for the new initiative. And so some next steps for you guys to do is to really think about if you want to change the flag, sort of get some new ideas, rank each flag like so I did in the other slide. And then after that, we could expand the amount of people aware of this initiative, like presenting to the RTM, having a presentation to other boards like the Board of Finance, and also expanding to more of a broad public input to see what the public thinks. And then sometime in January, if this moves forward, you would have a vote on whether or not to go ahead or strike down this idea. And if you decide to go ahead with it, we have to devise a rollout plan on how we're going to print the flag. I was thinking of having a ceremony on Flag Day where you lower the old flag and raise a new one, and also figure out media coverage for that day. So that's all I have. I appreciate you guys listening, and I'm open to any questions if anybody has any.
Just one quick addition. So I did check with Wayne Fox. This has not come up before, and it turns out that the Board of Selectmen actually has the authority to make these kinds of decisions. So the flag design really is up to us, and so that's why I wanted Harris to come to our board first. I do like his idea of talking to other boards and even the RTM, if for no other reason than to build awareness, get input, and get buy-in, so that if we do come to a decision, it reflects input from lots of folks in town, both elected officials as well as other residents. Questions for Harris? Sarah?
Thank you. What was your impetus for coming up with some flag redesign?
I'd seen a lot of stuff on the internet, and I think the thing that really kickstarted was I saw New Zealand. They had a contest where people could submit designs from the internet, and they would vote on a design they would have to redesign, because they still have their colonial flag, so they're going to try to redesign it. And then seeing that, I thought that was a really cool initiative, so I researched our town flag, and I just thought that we could apply similar redesign things to this town.
I love it. I like that they're so much simpler, and you can see the words so much better. I think ours is very busy.
Yep.
There's a lot going on in it, and I think it's a wonderful idea. I think any of the ones on the left-hand side of that screen, the previous screen that you had, would be phenomenal. I like the one with the green too, but it may be too much. And I
Yeah.
think maybe simple, just to keep with the white and the blue, but what do you guys think?
Marcy, questions?
First of all, thank you so much. This is a really awesome undertaking for a senior in high school, so props to you.
Not like he
and-
doesn't have anything else to do.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, just the initiative
Nothing
that
going
you've
on right now
taken,
this
and-
time,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's great, and I applaud you for your bravery in doing this, and
Thank you.
for, it's very cool. So that's first. Second of all, I mean, the most important thing to me is to make sure that we have as much engagement from the public as we can on making this decision.
Yep.
To me, I wouldn't like the five of us to say, this is our favorite and we want to choose.
Yep.
I would love to see lots of input from not even just the RTM, just however we can figure out a way to get public input on this, because it's exciting. And so many of our residents are going to be interested in you and your ideas and supporting this, and rising youths who are interested. And I think it's important that we get this story out and get the town involved.
I think that's an excellent idea. In fact, our town newsletter comes out every 2 weeks, and this past week, and I'll do it again week after next, is I'm going to have a First Selectmen only, just a brief newsletter.
Yep.
And I'll make this the first story. So
Yep,
just
great.
that'll go out to our database. How many people in our newsletter? I think it's around 5,000, I think, residents get the newsletter, so that'll be a good way to get that out. Monica, questions?
Yeah, Harris, great idea. You know, coming up with this initiative, very cool. You're gonna go far. So, but I agree with Marcy. I think this is a symbol for our town, and it's a really, I think it's a big decision. So I applaud your initiative. I think it would be great to have input, and maybe you could help on the school side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, you obviously have shown some leadership skills, but maybe you have leadership skills beyond just artistic, and you can figure out a way to get maybe some input from your fellow students.
Yeah.
I think that the more input we get on this, the better. There's no rush to do this. I think the RTM is a great place to start, but you know, even getting away from elected officials. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
maybe think about that a little bit, how
Yeah.
you could get more input on this.
I think
We
that's
certainly have
right.
an incredible rate of response every time we publish a survey.
That's true. Our recent surveys do get a lot of attention. One of the questions I had, when you talked to anybody and you did your survey, was it just the flags that you showed them, or did anyone have any kind of design questions or suggestions that you might add another design? Did that come up at all when you talked to
I
anybody?
mean, I sent it out through Google, what's it called?
Like a doodle poll or something? No.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
a Google poll. So it was all electronic. I just emailed
Okay.
it to people. So yeah, I didn't really have a lot of face-to-face conversation, but
Okay, I
I
got it.
sort of just went based off of the data.
Okay.
So when you did that, Harris, if I was your mom, and you said, hey, Mom, I'm thinking about redesigning the flag, which one of my designs do you like, or do you like the current one best? Of course, I would support you. So when you did this poll, did you let people know that you had designed all these others? I mean, was this
No.
truly yeah, okay. Okay.
I told you they'd come up with irritating questions.
No.
Irritating.
Guess I could have
Is there
thought-
biases in that?
It's great practice.
It's going to get worse. All right, so I think as a next step, you and I ought to touch base about getting this out to some different groups of people, and who might that be, and then what vehicles we might use to reach out to them. So we can talk whenever you're free, and let's map out a plan. And what I'll do is write that up and just circulate that to the board.
So is it the kind of thing that we should take a vote on whether or not we want to, I mean, I don't know the process, but whether or not we want to change the flag? And then once that gets pushed through as a process, then we say, okay, now we have this idea and plan, right? Because we have to vote that we even want to make the change, I would assume. or not?
We vote to continue the process to empower him to just go
Yeah.
out and circulate these designs, maybe
Okay.
collect additional designs, and come back with a second version of his findings in terms of what's resonating with people, what suggestions people have had, and then to try to get N as high as possible, N being just the number of people that you've touched with this. I think if we do that, plus some publicity either through the newsletter, we could conceivably do a little video that gets shipped out.
I just wouldn't want, 500 people to come back and say, oh, we like it, but maybe we should change this and maybe we should change that. Like if we voted on our 6 designs and then put that out for public
Yeah, so,
versus saying, oh, we're thinking about changing the flag, and then we have a lot of feedback and we're not really interested in getting feedback in that sense. We want to,
so that's a good question.
Right.
Do you think that the current slate of proposed flags is sufficient? In other words, we'd eventually pick one of those?
Yeah.
Or do you think that it would be good to have a more open-ended question that says, here's the stuff we've come up with, does anybody have any design suggestions?
I think that if you guys vote and go ahead with changing the flag, and you guys pick from these and send them out, and if it's an overwhelming negative response, maybe then
Okay.
we would need more designs.
Yeah.
But if it's not broken, don't fix it. If
Okay.
it's a positive response, then
And we should keep the current flag as an option,
yeah.
absolutely.
So Harris, would you be open to people reaching out to you and saying, mint green, not really for Darien. I don't know why we have mint green. Why don't we have purple? I don't know. Would you be interested in hearing feedback and tweaking any of this? Or do you foresee us choosing one of these 8 options?
I think it would be interesting to see if there's if people come up with the same sort of suggestion generally, but I think it might be better just to stick with these and then send them out. And if people do really don't like these, maybe then it might be better to move towards a more open-ended flag design process. But I think for now it might be better just to send out a selection of these and then see what happens.
I'd agree. I think
I
there's
agree with
enough
that.
variety
Yep.
with some of these pictures, and I think they look great.
Yeah, what we could do is if we do get design suggestions, Maria can translate them into flags we could consider. So let's just see what we hear. All right, well, I guess we do. Could I have a motion to ask Harris to continue the flag redesign process, including syndication of these flags with a broader audience, and to report back to us at a future date? Sarah moves. Marcy seconds. All in favor? Okay, you're on. So,
Great.
all right, let's see what happens next. We'll be in touch.
thanks,
you.
Sarah.
Thank you for
Do you want
coming.
me to close out of the?
Just hit escape, I think. and-
Yeah. And then can you just minimize that?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thanks,
terrific.
Harris.
Thank you, Harris.
Do you want to
That's
just leave the?
great. Yes, that's
Yeah,
great.
that's perfect.
All right,
Thank
thanks.
you.
Okay, next up, discuss and take action on a request for an appropriation and bond authorization for the purchase and of a replacement tanker for the Darien Fire Department. So Brian Fansfort's here and can talk about this. Some feedback that I've gotten on this is that if you have read through the form that they completed for their funding request for all this, the original estimate for this, even though maybe if it wasn't completely and fully baked, was that replacing the tanker would be the $1 million zip code. And this one has come in at 1.7 million, which feels like Weed Beach in terms of just a significant cost overrun versus what was projected. So I'm not saying that we don't need to replace fire equipment. We definitely need to do that. But I think that this is a good time to just take a fresh look at our replacement schedule, take a look at how that equipment's being priced, because a lot of times it's not just the truck or the equipment itself, it's what surrounds it and the other things that you would buy in terms of options. But just take a fresh look at that. So I met earlier today with Sean Murphy, who's the chairman of the Fire Commission, and asked the commission maybe to help us just take a fresh look at this and make sure that we haven't left anything out in terms of what else we might consider, because this is a big ask. And I know that fire apparatus is getting much more expensive, and we're just going to have to deal with that in the future. But I think we owe it to our taxpayers just to say we're going to take a fresh look at all this just to make sure. Jennifer and I talked about this earlier. Jennifer, can you add to that?
They update their replacement schedule every year, and the last time they did it was November of '23. So it's actually really good timing because they're working on it right now to get into the budget process. So I think the encouragement to really look at the numbers that are there, the timing of the replacements is going to fit in well flowing into the budget process too.
Comments or questions? Okay.
I'd love to see a copy of the revised. I think it's, we have a couple years coming up. I don't remember what years. You have to tell me. Is it 26 or 27?
26 has 2 engines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot coming up,
Yeah.
and it's,
Maybe it would be helpful, just since they're here, is to hear a quick presentation of this particular vehicle and what they're requesting. And maybe you've got further insights about the selection process here that would just load us up with information as we sort through this.
Hello, everybody. So the $1 million on that replacement schedule, I'm not exactly sure. I know how we came up with it. It was based upon previous apparatus that were purchased, and then we did like a 5% increase. The truck that we based it upon was significantly different than the one that we're going after. The one that we're going after is similar to the one that we're replacing. We did add an additional 1,000 gallons of water on the truck, but it is basically the same truck.
From how much does the current one take to how much water would the new
The
one?
current one that we have is 2,500 gallons,
This is good to
and we're looking at 3,500 gallons. We have a couple of reasons why we're going that route. With electric vehicles, we've run into a problem where we need big water to put these vehicles out. So that's, one reason that we're looking to add the additional water, as well as I-95 and our ISO rating for the town. The current tanker is a 1996, and I know that budget number that we got for $1 million was increased based upon 5% over X amount of years. Back when COVID hit, everything went absolutely crazy. I'm running into problems even outside of here, even with DPW purchasing trucks. Things are just through the roof across the board. And I know that we had some issues trying to come up with the actual number that would have brought us closer to where we are now.
Okay. Questions for Brian?
Yeah, Chief, so there's not a lot of information here on this sheet. So you say that the truck was $1 million and now it's $1.7 million, and some of it is equipment. Can you break that out? Like, what are you adding on?
Well, there's minimal equipment going on the truck. Bunch of the stuff is coming off the current truck and going on to that, but some of the equipment that is going on that, which is generally replaced when you replace this piece of apparatus, is the portable tank that's on the side. It's our dump tank, so when you get onto a scene, you can dump the water and then go get another tank of water and shuttle it back and forth. So the truck's not dedicated on the scene the whole time that it's supplying water. There's some additional hoses and fittings that are going to go on the truck that help surrounding communities because they have different adapters, different hydrant types. We do run a Fairfield County mutual aid system, so the truck can be called to other counties to assist in fire control.
So that would be helpful to, to have incorporated that into the $1 million. If the 7 sounds like it's some inflation and then a lot of add-ons. And if you typically add on, then maybe that number should be incorporated in the $1 million in the first place.
Yeah, with that $1 million, if I recall correctly, it was very difficult to come up with that number when we were doing it. There wasn't a lot of tankers being bought at that time in the area, so I didn't really have anything to go by when we came up with that number. And clearly, I was off that number when we put that in the replacement schedule.
Okay, and then when you, the mutual aid, I'm guessing that's not a new thing, right?
No, that's always been.
Right, okay. So how many calls has the current tanker responded to? Do you have that number?
I don't have that number, the actual number, but I would say it's probably somewhere about 50 calls for the year.
For the year?
Yeah.
Okay. And this is, the lifespan of this is what?
So what I currently wrote on there was 20 plus. The current tanker we have now is a 1996. The build time for this truck is 1,400 days. So by the time we receive the truck, if we were to, complete this project and sign contracts sometime this year, we'd be looking at, the truck would probably be 32, 33 years old.
Okay. And I know I ask this all the time, but, you know, in big equipment like ships, for instance, scrap value is a real thing. So what do you do with this old piece of equipment? Do you recapture can you add, you know, take off some of this price by
So there's
reselling?
been some discussion about what we would do with that piece of apparatus when it goes. I would say most likely it's gonna go to either an auction or it's gonna be posted up with one of the fire medic companies to try to get a resale on it. There is some light discussion right now on, we were thinking about turning that piece into a crash truck for I-95. I don't know if you're aware that Greenwich just had a pretty significant accident that actually totaled one of their fire trucks, and several firefighters were hurt when a tractor trailer slammed into their truck. I know that in the future we are going to be looking to purchase something along those lines. I've been working with Sean to see if that piece of equipment could be sufficient enough for what we want to do. And I have a feeling it's not going to be, because one of the issues I'm running into right now is that particular model I'm having trouble getting parts for. And it's very difficult. Currently the fuel tank's leaking on it. So we're getting ready to pull that out of service. I can't get a tank for it. It's gonna have to be patched and repaired, most likely at the town garage. So I would say that we're most likely gonna put that out to auction and part ways with it. And I cannot give you a value on what we would get for it.
I think when you do that in the future, I personally would like to know what you got for it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
As far as I know, whatever we sell it for comes back to you guys.
Sure, but I think your point's a good one, which is, in fact, for all future fire apparatus requests, there should be a net number down there that says, here's the gross cost, and here's what we're expecting in terms of plan and next steps with the current vehicle. I think that's fine. We'll put that in permanently. Sarah?
I have a couple of questions for you. Thank you for coming and talking with us more about it. You said something that was interesting. You said this was a different truck than you had planned on going for, which was in the original request. What was the difference? Was it just the capacity, or
The capacity
what was
of the
different?
water was the biggest thing.
So the $1 million probably would have been closer to maybe the cost for the 2,500, but the 1.7, is that what do you think the differential is?
No, so the issue with that $1 million is that was not a good number
Got
from the
it.
get-go.
Okay.
I can honestly say back before 2019, if you asked me the cost of a truck off the top of my head like that, I could tell you within 5% how much a truck costs. I absolutely don't even try to do that anymore. I have to call the dealers for everything. A lot of, for example, the DPW trucks. I'm running into a lot of problems trying to purchase trucks right now. Can't get transmissions in the trucks. Everything's getting delayed. I think I'm in year 3 right now trying to purchase a DPW truck. And the costs are just going through the roof at this point. And that number just probably was not a good number to even put down at the time.
No, that's fine. I think what might be helpful, I have two other questions. One is if we could take a look at the current replacement schedule, and instead of having incredibly educated guesses based on your experience, I'm wondering if we maybe do a little bit more research into those numbers, because if we're going to be planning on the next 10 years in the schedule, if the numbers are going to be double possibly, and just because that's what's happening in the market, we need to know that as a town if we're planning. Because if some of the numbers that we've got planned for 26, if it's double, we need to have that understanding.
Yeah, what we'll need to do is to have both updated current prices for
Yeah.
all this stuff based on what they're planning to include in these trucks if
Yes.
we were to buy them all today.
Yes.
And then a separate discussion is, okay, what inflation factor would we attach
Right.
to each one of these? So we have an estimate of what it would cost, say, 5 years from now. And I don't know
Right.
what that number is. To your point, we'd have to take a look.
Yeah. The 4-year advance, no, that's incredible to me. How much do we have to put down?
0. Everything's COD.
There you go.
So,
Wow, that's brave.
Well, here's my, anything else to add, or?
no, go ahead.
So here's my recommendation. I don't think we're prepared to send this through yet. We need some more detail based on your comments. I think Sarah's right, we ought to have a fresh look at the capital schedule for fire apparatus that updates both vehicles, timing, pricing, kind of all that stuff, so we can take one more look at this. That's not to say that we don't need to replace this, I agree with that, that's why these schedules were invented, but just the, I think, surprise factor with this number suggests we need to do a little bit more work. I don't think this will unduly delay this, but I think it's important that we get that just right before we hand this off to the Board of Finance for their consideration.
I absolutely agree.
Okay.
I want to leave you with 2 comments. The rescue, when we went to purchase it, we were at, for just the truck, was 1.6 million. Sean, what was purchases?
2.3.
So the almost, I'm not gonna say identical, a very similar truck, about a year and a half later.
A little bit more than that. But
I will say 2 years was 2.3.
Yeah.
When I did speak to the representative that we deal with from Seagrave, I asked him what the current cost of an engine today is. He said right around 1.4 million, and I said that you need to give me an estimated cost of what it's gonna cost me in 2026, 2027. And he's like, I really can't do that. I said, educated guess. He said most likely 1.6, 1.7 million. So when we go to do those replacement of engines, you know, there is gonna be a significant increase
Yeah.
then as well.
Yeah, in your defense, when we had the Christie Hill fire, and I think that was the first deployment of the new ladder truck from the Heights, it was a quantum leap over what we had before, right, in terms of lighting, technology, how it worked, and what everybody said about the truck. And it was clear it made a real difference to have new equipment. There's a big difference between the 28-year-old truck and the one that you would purchase. So I'm mindful of that.
Well, with that being said, if I had the option, I would much rather keep the older trucks as a mechanic.
Yeah,
They're much
of course.
easier to work on.
I didn't say that.
No computers to work on those older trucks.
I didn't say that the design for serviceability was at the top of their list, but I hear you, so,
Yeah.
all right. Other,
Just comments. So certainly, I think our role as being a part of the Board of Selectmen is to certainly ensure the safety of the crew, right, your staff. So I would like to see a breakdown of certainly the safety components that are on this, that are a benefit from the previous, and then also, how could you use it more effectively? Taxpayers are going to want to know, how is this a better investment to keep our community more safe? So obviously, the extra 1,000 gallons worth of water is certainly a benefit to everybody. Are there scenarios in which you can particularly see that was, you know, obviously he's using the Christie Hill case and saying, wow, that was fantastic to have this new device here. I would love to see that same for this one. Like, how are we upgrading, right? How are we benefiting our customer, which is our taxpayers,
So one of the
and keeping you guys safe?
One of the key things I might not have spoken about yet is we do still have a small area in town, primarily in the North Country, that is non-hydrogen.
Okay.
So the only way to get water there is the 2 tankers that are in
Okay.
town. We also call in mutual aid from Stanford and other surrounding communities, New Canaan. Norwalk doesn't have a tanker, so we move past them and go to Wilton and so on into New York, depending on the nature of the incident and how large it is. This one's 30 years old. This one has gotten its lifespan now, and unfortunately, it's developed several problems. One is the tank's leaking, and it's just hit its lifespan at this point. And trust me, if we could, I would refurb it,
Of
but
course.
you gotta weigh the pros and cons, and I think the pros are to move in this direction.
If I can just put this into context, I'm the First Assistant Chief for Darien Fire. Both of our engines carry 750 gallons as a booster tank of water. So if we go to a fire and we send individuals in to start an interior attack, they've got roughly 4 or 5 minutes worth of water. And so, especially in the North Country where there's no hydrogen and we can't establish an effective water supply, this gives us time.
Yeah.
Right, and that alone, from a safety factor, is incredibly important to us as, you know, we're making command decisions of how to fight a fire, where to send firefighters in, and whatnot. So, you know, just from a safety factor alone, it's a big benefit to have a water supply that gives us time to be able to effect an emergency.
Thank you.
Anything else, Brian?
No, I mean, if you guys have got any other questions, if you want to reach out to me, but as far as the safety factors, I've already reached out to the rep and I've asked for the presentation that was given to us.
Okay.
As far as the new safety features about the new apparatus. And I'll put a little something together to help explain why we chose this manufacturer over somebody else. We also, this manufacturer is on one of our cooperative buying networks. It's the HJC contract, which I've used numerous times for other purchases, not even just for the fire department, but for DPW and some of the other departments. So they are on one of our networks.
Yeah, I'd love to see that.
Hey, Brian, so you said 50 a year, does that include Northern Darien and 95?
Yeah, that includes,
All calls?
yeah, majority of those calls, I would say were probably 95. I know that we had the tractor trailer fire that the tanker responded to, both tankers. We've had a couple of mutual aid calls into Norwalk for tractor trailer fires. I mean, Dorchester was a while ago, but Dorchester, we had a structure fire at a residential house up there, and that was the first tanker to show up to supply water to us for that fire. But yeah, majority of them are probably 95.
Now, for the ever-changing nature of emergencies as well, right? We're fighting fires in bigger homes that are being built. One, we're also fighting from a 95 perspective, potentially EV fires. And to put that into context, if we go to like an internal combustion engine car, like a regular car, we can put a car fire out with a booster tank, maybe sometimes half of a booster tank. Fires go out pretty good, and in EV fire, if the batteries go into what's called thermal runaway, that's the point at which water is not very effective. It's just going to burn. It can take 15 to 20,000 gallons. So you go from 400 or 500 gallons of water to 15 to 20,000 gallons of water to cool those batteries to the point where the fire extinguishes itself. And so the crazy amount of water just to fight that type of fire is important. So again, one of the very first things that we're thinking about when we get on scene is how do we establish an effective water supply. And doing it on 95, doing it in the north part of town, where it's not as easy. Water's not coming. The way a hydrant is just right there to give you water. You have to establish a portable pond, refill that, then go fill up the truck, come back, refill it again. That's why we have a tanker task force to help us that. So water supply is just an incredibly important aspect. So this is a very important truck from a firefighting perspective.
Mr. Davis.
Two things. Pre-pandemic, we used to get a fire engine between 18 to 24 months. The last one we just did was a 3-year delivery. This one's a 4-year delivery. So when we're looking at our schedule of when we want to replace these, assuming that until somebody tells us otherwise, we're now at a 4-year delivery for fire engines, because I understand, I think they're done in Wisconsin, but they're all busy there. The fact of the matter is that looking at that schedule, I'm just wondering whether or not that shouldn't be taken into consideration, because in the past when we said, oh, we need it here, and 2 years later we get it. Now it may be there, so that might have us decide to move some of these things up. That's number one. Number two, how we pay for them, the fact that they're bonded is perfect, because it just stays out there until we finally receive it. But the last one was 25% when the frame was built, if I recall, or something like that.
I believe that was the other department, so the
Yeah,
manufacturer that I'm using is COD. I owe them nothing
Right.
until the end.
So that was 25 when the frame was built, which was a year out, and then 75% in 2 years later for it. So now that we're getting COD, I mean, that's good reason that we should continue authorizing bonding of these.
No doubt. Okay,
Do we do 30 or 20 on these?
these are 20.
For your looking into the replacement schedule, could we also somehow have a component if we're replacing a certain type of vehicle, if there's any other similar ones on either of the other departments that are in town? Just to understand how many tankers
Yeah.
that are in town. I think we should take a holistic view at the,
So I could speak a little bit about that briefly. So in town, we have 3 ladders. All 3 ladders are completely different pieces of apparatus. None of the departments really have an identical truck per se. Some of the engines are very similar, but Norotan Heights has a tanker. They have a single axle short little truck that is very maneuverable, can get right into a driveway. This is a bigger truck that can still get in the majority of the driveways, but carries big water. They're carrying, I believe, 1,800 gallons. We're looking at 3,500 gallons. The ladders are all different in town. One's 100 foot, one's a 75, and one's a tower ladder with a bucket on it. So generally, when we purchase apparatus, we never try to mirror any of the apparatus that are in town, so we're all having
Understood.
something that's beneficial
Yep.
in whatever scenario we're brought against. I mean, I had a chimney fire at one location, I brought in the ladder from another department because I needed the longer reach. So,
no, I think it's hugely helpful, and I think it's just a matter of just understanding holistically, what do we have? And making sure that we have the different types. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so do we need a motion to table this, or do we just move on? Okay, can I get a motion to table the decision for now on the replacement tanker for the Darien Fire Department? Sarah moves, Monica seconds, all in favor? Okay, we'll get back to you soon.
thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, next up, discuss and consider action on registrars of voters' salaries for the next term. Susan?
Good evening. I'm here to talk about the registrars of voters' salaries. If you guys recall, back in June of '23, when we went through the comp study for the non-reps, we also did take a look at a couple of our elected officials. And this green and yellow chart that you got, the dates on the yellow parts are a little bit, aren't quite correct, but on June 19th of '23, some adjustments were made to the elected offices of town clerk, tax collector, and treasurer. We could not at that time do anything about altering the salaries of the registrars of voters because they're on a different term. They're off by a year, and we're not allowed to change the compensation during a term. So we are now at the end of their term, and we'd like to, we took a look at, they requested us to take a look at their salaries, and we did do that. Given the fact that they weren't able to be adjusted back when we did everybody else, and more importantly, given the fact that they now have a significant, their jobs have grown significantly with early voting, we have gone out, the other chart that you have is what the same 5 towns that we looked at to do the general comp study, we looked at them again. With regard to their registrars of voters, I've been in touch with those HR directors, as well as some of the information I got from their budget reports. But in any case, after going through the analysis that you see on the second page there, we are requesting, an increase in the registrar of voters' salaries for next year to be at $40,000 as a base salary, and then to mirror what we did with the other elected officials, because it's a 2-year term and you can't change anything during that term, we would like to include an increase the following year of 3%, which would be the same as what we were doing for the other elected officials. So.
Yes, so Susan and I talked about this quite a bit, and we met with our registrars. So the big impetus for this is really what I would call change in role and responsibilities, right? Historically, I don't think we want to give pay increases outside of a normal inflation-adjusted schedule unless there's been a significant change in what the person in question is doing. So in the case of the Registrar of Voters, Exhibit A was what I talked about in my first Selectmen comments. I mean, the amount of work to get early voting pulled off, in addition to absentee voting and all of that, Connecticut statutes have changed the nature of that job in a fairly substantial way. There's there's frankly just more work involved, not just in the process, but in managing the volunteers associated with that process, communication about the process. And as I said, kudos to them that we've gotten through this early voting period with, as far as I can tell, not a single mistake. So it's a lot of work to actually get that to happen. So that was really the impetus for Susan to consider, and then for me to reflect on this increase. It seems like a large amount, but if you look at the $40,000 in comparison with what registrars in other towns are making, especially taking into account the fact that this role has benefits, whereas in some places they do not. Taking all that into account, raising to $40,000 puts them at the median, right? So they're kind of right in the middle of the other towns. Again, thinking about which ones have and don't have benefits. But if we put them at $40,000, in my judgment, that's fair compensation for this role from two factors or two standpoints. One is comparison with what registrars are paid in other towns, and two, I think this fairly takes into account the change in responsibilities that our registrars have had. In terms of timing and this odd schedule here, as Susan pointed out, all of the elected officials are elected in off years or off from presidential years and odd years, except the registrar of voters, and they're elected in even years. And so what we try to do with this chart is to say every year around this time we're going to have to make a decision about elected official compensation. Last year in November-ish timeframe was we decided all of the roles that you see there. The Board of Finance does the first selectman salary. And then this year we're not deciding any of those, but we do need to decide the registrar of voters. And then next year we'll have another set of decisions, except that time it'll be for the other elected roles. So we're going to have this set up as a rolling schedule so that you'll be able to see sort of where everybody was, what the percentage change is, and then we'll probably have some benchmarking below that. But this rolling schedule will be in front of you every year, and I think will bring clarity to kind of our decisions on that. Couple that with some benchmarks, hopefully that'll be clear. But it took us a while to sort through this and get this correct in terms of starting date, when we need to make the decision and all that, but I think we accomplished that. Mm-hmm. But my recommendation, and I agree with Susan's recommendation that we should take them to $40,000, and that'll be effective at the start of their term, which is the first Wednesday after the first Monday, in this case, January 8th. Questions?
So Susan, you're using these comps from the last study. Have you checked to see?
They're updated.
When were they updated? Were they changed in response to the additional workload?
No, actually, some of them were not. Because I did put an email out to not even just these 5 towns, but a lot of other towns to see if people were had updated for early voting. And the answer I got back was almost everybody said we couldn't. They were in the middle of the term. So I think some of the ones that you're seeing, New Canaan's actually is the same number that you saw the last time. Everybody else's are up slightly, and I think I have a feeling that just went up because they probably had something similar where they did a midterm thing that they had planned ahead of time. One that the town that went up significantly was Wilton. They went up significantly from the last time you saw that. But so New Canaan is the same numbers you saw last time. Wilton is a lot different, and then the other 2 are slightly higher than they were before.
And I understand this bump now. That makes a lot of sense to me. I'm just questioning the 3%.
Right. So what we did.
Explain that.
Yep. It's the same thought process that we had when we did it for the other elected officials in 2023. And that was because you can't change their compensation during their term, and all of the other employees in town get at least a cost of living increase in July, plus there's a performance aspect to that in the non-reps. We don't do performance evaluations on elected officials, so we can't, it's not really the exact same thing. But what we decided back in 2023 was to give a bump midterm that was equal to about the exceeds expectations level that the non-reps got as an increase. And so we just kind of mirrored that same thing here. And what John and I talked about when we were discussing this process is if we give them 3% moving forward, and actually I think we discussed this with you guys too at the time, if we do the 3% midterm, and then there's a really terrible financial year, and that next year all the non-reps get 1% increase, and that's the best we can do, we'd have to stick with the 3 here because we can't change it, but then in their new term, we would have to make some sort of adjustment for that. So any kind of adjustment, if we are off on that midterm thing, would have to be done in the beginning of the new term. And that's the best way we can do it, since we can't do it on a yearly basis.
Yeah, and with this rolling schedule over a longer term, it allows us to go back and do true-ups like this to make sure that the percentage increases are, for the elected officials in terms of cost of living, work out to be the same ones that the town hall employees get. 3% is just a plug for right now, and the next time we'll true that up, make an adjustment so that over time you get the same answer. I think that's a very fair question. Other questions for Susan?
Well, as I'm looking at this, I'm seeing that, first of all, I'm curious why we're not doing this in executive session. So that's my first question.
Yeah, because Jen rightly pointed out that in executive session, they always have done this in the past in executive session.
Yep.
But it's usually been executive session, if we were talking about the performance of the employee, that would have to be executive session. And oftentimes when you're getting that big comp study or the comp plan for the new year, it's telling you each person's salary based on the performance evaluation that they got. They get a certain percentage. In this case, what's that?
Yeah, that's not public.
That's not public. In this case, we're not talking about performance. We're talking about an increase in duties and scope. And so this is a conversation that should be had in public.
Yeah, I would point out that the Board of Finance discussion of the first selectman salary is always in public session. So I think, and these are all a matter of public record anyway.
Okay.
I mean, you know what people make. And so just to Jennifer's good point, she reminded us that it doesn't qualify as either a land discussion or a confidential personal discussion about someone, let's say an individual, interviews, evaluations, that sort of thing. This is really not for the individuals, but for the job itself, and that's public information. So.
The other thing is, I am certain that this job has changed tremendously in a 1-year calendar time. Legislation has changed outrageously in a year's time. So a lot of, I think, these studies of, compensation studies could likely be very obsolete, never mind in 3 months from now when they start to recollect to see the work and the time that these 2 women have put in over the course of the last 14 days. I'd love to hear from both of them tonight as to what they've been doing for 14 days, because they're exhausted. I know they're exhausted. I know you want to go home and go to sleep. But I just really want to make sure that you guys are being compensated and valued for every ounce of work that you have been doing over the course of the last year. Because legislation has really given it to us and given these women a job that is double the amount of work that they have been doing the last time we had this conversation. So I'd love to hear.
Ladies, please.
I'm going to just give her support.
Susan doesn't want to speak
to a
tonight.
few things, but I'm so tired that I can't get my words.
Well, first of all, thank you all for the nice, kind words, and thank you all for supporting early voting, and I know all of you are very supportive of it, and we all appreciate it, and I think we saw a bunch of you there. I just also want to take this opportunity, we'll talk about what we've been doing, but I do want to thank all of our wonderful poll workers who have worked their tails off. They have learned new processes that they were not comfortable with being on computers. They have accessed the state's centralized voter registration system. They took it so seriously. They never once, inappropriately looked through voter records. They were absolute rock stars. Sometimes equipment issues, we had networking issues. They transitioned to Plan B. Our records were reconciled and perfect every single night. We know not other towns are like that. So I really do want to take this opportunity first and foremost to thank all of our wonderful poll workers, many of whom who worked 14 days and are coming back tomorrow morning at 4:45, 5 a.m. and who were here today just to ask us if we needed help, to check in. So I want to take this opportunity to publicly thank them all.
And we don't have an election. We've said this so many
Without
times
them.
too. Without them. And I got an email from one of the registrars in Wilton. I think it was yesterday. And she said, I know you're really busy, but are your poll workers having a problem with some of the technologies that we're trying to teach them? I don't know if we're just super smart, Marianne. I'm serious. We have not had, no matter what age they are, they just come in and learn it and do it, and they do it, if we have a few ballots off, we got a directive from the Secretary of the State, because we were fixing things the next morning. You cannot go home any night of early voting until every single thing is reconciled. And they're like, no problem. 10:30 at night, 9:30 at night, we're all there, we're all chipping in, we're all doing it. Nobody complained ever. I was thinking driving over here this morning, how can we thank them?
We have to throw them a party.
We're gonna
do
have a
something.
party.
We're gonna do something to recognize them.
But
to
you know
put,
what, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Darien.
Yeah,
That's
no,
the way to
exactly.
do it.
There's a lot of hate
It's
types.
amazing.
Unbelievable.
So, I mean, to put little things in perspective, right? I think we've had 10 times the amount of election-like days, where normally there would be 2 or 3.
31 days.
We had
this
31
year of voting
days
instead
of
of 3.
voting alone, right? So that's backward looking up until tomorrow. Additional 120 hours for November alone of people actively voting, where normally in November it would be 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. We've had 120 hours in November alone of people, right? We know the number of people we've had with absentee ballots, but right on early voting in person, people coming into room 119, 44% of our active registered voters. And I think we had 134 people register in person and vote. So, that alone, we've never had 134 people register in person in a 2-week time period in our office. It's just unheard of. People really liked it, clearly. We have staffed over 200 shifts for November. All those people, so dozens of teams of workers. We have a roster of over 120 people that the two of us, have trained, answered questions. So we've recruited, hired, trained over 120 people to learn not just the process they were used to of, we find the name, we line it out, we hand a ballot, give them a sticker. This was a dramatically different process of ensuring, and right, it had to be done right. Everyone had to be trained on it right, because election integrity is crucial nowadays, even more under the focus and under the microscope than ever before. And in order to keep people confident in our system, election integrity and the perceived impression of election integrity is crucial. And so we had to train people both on, get their buy-in on, yeah, it's different. We know you yes, you'll have your paper as a backup, but here's why. And we had to explain it's to ensure that in the system, real time, because the two processes were happening simultaneously, we had to check them in the system and check them out, because
And they were
so they couldn't
flawless.
go.
It was unbelievable.
So they couldn't vote right another way if we had left a gap in time. So would people really do? Probably not. But it was crucial both to the Secretary of State and to our office to ensure that everything was reconciled and everything was done that night and logged in the central system, so that people on whatever side of the aisle knew and understood that there was no opportunity to vote twice, that people were going to have the opportunity to vote, that our results were going to be accurate. And so we got a lot of questions, a lot of pushback from, a lot of questions from voters. But so there was both the education piece of over 120, over 100 staffers who are our poll workers. We staffed over 200 shifts for early voting. That's on top of the 130 people that we recruited, staffed, and trained for
the
tomorrow.
election tomorrow.
And so
And we didn't
leaving here
increase our
soon.
staff, as you know.
No.
We didn't, we just.
So I think we just want to put that in perspective, publicly thank all of our poll workers. And we purchased a lot of new equipment. We trained people on it. We got it all. Oh, we have to George also has been absolutely
Amazing.
Stupendous and amazing, as has our
Can't do
Public
without
Works colleagues who have really helped us along the way as well. We couldn't have done it without them.
And I want to say one other thing.
Yep.
I think we did early voting. We really had a lot of phone calls with the Secretary of the State. We had a lot of Zoom calls. We learned so much. We got so much information from them that we had to get up to speed on in a short amount of time, and it kept changing. Barraging us with emails. This, you have to do it this way. No, we're going to do it this way. Come to the Zoom meeting, we'll decide. It was craziness, but
Procedures changed.
we
each time.
ended up doing 2 lines in our early voting, which was a really good idea, with ballot boxes, and other towns did not, and there were 50 people deep waiting to vote, and we did not have, we had like maybe 10 people
We never had a
waiting,
line longer
ever.
than 15 minutes.
So we did our ballot boxes, and another town did not do ballot boxes, and they have a state enforcement election commission complaint against them. It's a nearby town because voters did not trust the process, but we had sealed voting boxes that we ordered. And I also want to say we lent out labels because we ordered to a nearby town who were desperate. Because we ordered so much stuff, actually the perfect amount, we were 12 ballots short, and we used poll ballots out of how many people? How many thousands of people voted exactly? We were 12 ballots short. Other towns ran out of ballots. So
close to 7,000
So we had a lot of troubleshooting during these last 2 weeks to try to figure out, and I think we did a really good job because we literally had to use 12 poll ballots instead of, we reordered in the middle of the week. We were running out of ballots. We had no idea early voting would be such a huge success.
Thank you both. Thank you,
Well, we
teams.
really appreciate
Thank
it.
everyone.
Thank you.
We're very appreciative.
Thank you guys so
You bet.
much.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night.
Thank
We're gonna go
you.
finish preparing for tomorrow.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Susan?
No, I support this.
All right, as do I. Got to get a motion to approve the salary changes for the registrar of voters as proposed in the exhibit by Susan.
Thank you,
Monica moves, Sarah seconds, all in favor? Okay, thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
you, ladies. Okay. Next up is discuss and take action on the proposed 2025 Board of Selectmen meeting calendar. So in your packet, we had a set of meetings here, and what I wanted to do was to go through a couple things. This has been checked versus the holiday calendar, so I think we're in good shape across all religious and national holidays. We've perhaps over-included budget review meetings on here. It's basically a copy from what we had last year. Jennifer and I have worked on this idea that we're not going to use OpenGov for presentation of the budget. We're actually going to use the master spreadsheet that'll actually show the same numbers, but it's going to have comments that we pull from OpenGov, and you'll be able to flip from topic to line item much, much faster. I think it's going to cut out half the amount of time just because we don't have to stand there and wait for OpenGov to respond. So we may not need this many meetings to do that. Could I get comments from anybody in terms of absences so we can adjust the schedule?
Well, yeah, I mentioned it a
Yeah,
while
all
ago.
right, so
I can't do the 27, 28, or 29.
27, 28, or 29, Monica, okay. Others?
March 10th.
March 10th is a
And
regular.
then the difficulty, most of my absences may be tied to an academic calendar, which is not yet released. So
Okay.
my apologies.
All right. Anybody else? Michael?
Perhaps January 6th.
January 6th, okay. Marcy? You're good?
I'm good.
So could we, as a straw man, could we compress the budget review to be partly on February 3rd, which looks like a regular meeting, and then on the 4th and 5th of February, and compress all those meetings into those?
I think we can make that work.
So you're saying take out 27, 28, and 29, make
Correct.
it 3rd, 4th, and 5th instead?
Yeah. Honestly, it's going to go a lot faster this time, just because of this process will be a lot more efficient. The only thing I would ask, though, is that when we get these budget books out, I do think it would be helpful for us to have the same kind of presentation that Kate had done in the past, to just say, at a high level, this is where we are, and this is the big stuff, right? So it was, healthcare is a big thing, this big change here, that big change. There'll be, call it a dozen of those that we might want to focus on, because the rest of the budget will be inflation, or it's union-driven, or it's personnel costs that really are not things we're going to change unless we're going to start terminating people or doing something significantly different than what's proposed. Jennifer, what do you think about this? The summary may help us focus our questions in an efficient way so we can boil it down to these dates.
I think if we, maybe on, one idea is the January 21st joint department head meeting.
Yep.
Maybe we tack on just a very brief budget overview at that point, so you can start thinking about it, and we can send files to you. You'll have full access to OpenGov, even though that's not what we're gonna use in our meetings, but maybe get something to you the week of January 27th that you can review on your own, so we can hit the ground running February 3rd.
I would almost demand that. I think in the past, I've frustrated with, getting the budget the night before.
Maybe what we could do
Yeah.
too is that week you can, at least, I won't respond to your questions, but you can filter your questions to me, and that way we know that we can address them right
So
away.
are we not using OpenGov?
Oh, no, we're totally using OpenGov,
Okay.
but what you recall is that when we would present the budget,
Yeah.
you had to futz around and wait for the system to load.
I
You'll
So
still
if-
have
can totally
you-
appreciate it,
You
but
still have all
okay.
the same detail,
So
but
when we
just
go
in
into
a,
meet, like third, fourth, and fifth, we'll be using OpenGov to go in and see all the.
You will have
Detail.
access to it before then, but when
Right.
we're in our actual sessions.
We're not using
We
it.
won't put it up on.
But I can
Yeah,
still be
but
in
you
there.
will be able to.
yeah,
get
the
it.
only difference, so there's not gonna be any difference in the numbers or line items in the spreadsheet that's
No, I
presented.
can,
It's
just,
just gonna be that we're gonna pull the comments out, and we've asked the department heads to keep them short and pithy. And that, so that Jennifer and I can talk to them as we
Yeah.
kind of go through them, but it'll be a lot faster.
sounds good.
All right, so the proposal here is that we would incorporate some presentation of the budget highlights, if you will, at the department head meeting on the 21st, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
something like
think we
that.
could, at least, we may not have the final numbers, but we can tell you, these are the big ones, this is what they're looking like.
All right, so if we were to have then our potentially budget discussions as part of the meeting on February 3rd and then 4th and 5th, would everybody have their budget books well in advance so that you guys can
We
study?
don't get
and go-
books.
Oh, that's it.
You keep saying books.
All right, sorry, OpenGov. We have OpenGov, and that you'll be able to sort through that and look through that. Because I'm mindful of your point, I want everybody to have that well in advance, so you guys can study that.
It
and look
allows
under
us to,
questions.
yes.
Yeah,
When
okay.
we get it the night before, it was not so good.
All
So
right, so
thank you.
is that okay? What else could we do to make this flow better?
Capital plan,
Um,
fleshed out.
I went through, my draft presentation of that with Jennifer today and showed her kind of what we're going to do that lays all this out. Jim Palin has actually worked out a detailed schedule, and we're going to translate that into some presentation slides that'll go not just to this board, the Board of Finance, RTM, all of that, and that's going to be done, fingers crossed, before the State of the Town address, and I can address some highlights then. But we're going to do a complete presentation of that before we ask anybody to take further action on Wheat Beach, fire trucks, anything like that. But that'll incorporate a longer-term view. It might not match up precisely with all the capital budgets, because I'm just trying to get a general sense of things. But that presentation should marry well with what the capital plans are for next year.
Sounds good.
Other questions? Okay, so what we're going to do is, we're going to have this schedule as presented, except January 27, 2029. We're going to take that out. Mike and Sarah, Sarah, I know you guys were maybe not here for these other meetings, but every once in a while, somebody's going to miss a meeting, and that's okay. The only other thing I would add is that over the course of the year, once we finalize this, there's a variety of boards and commissions I'd like them to present to the Board of Selectmen. So we will weave that into this, and so these meetings will have at times on our agenda as boards and commissions come to talk to us. So I do want to try to get sustainability and coastal advisory before the end of the year, but I'm working on that. So other questions on the calendar? Did we catch everything?
Then, John, you're going to have Zoom in June and Zoom in August.
Zoom in August, just because that's a vacation month, and then Zoom in June for the 2nd, because if there's any spot for me to take any vacation at all next year, it would be in June after Memorial Day, and I'm just going to declare that one Zoom, because I can. So hopefully that works for everybody.
Yeah.
Other questions or changes or edits we can make? Okay, can I get a motion to?
Oh, wait, the only
What?
question I have, do we look at the, and whoever put this calendar together, do we look at all religious holidays? We make sure that we're not coinciding with any religious holidays?
Juneteenth, and school breaks.
Thank you, that's all I need.
Yep, we did all that.
So so she knows the school breaks already?
Yeah.
You don't for?
Yeah, their calendar is out on their
Yeah,
website.
they go 2 years out.
Oh, I thought you were saying that you,
She's college.
Come on, college.
oh, for college, got it, sorry. I thought you
My
graduated.
baby's a sophomore in college.
Grown children.
Got it.
Okay. Could I get a motion to approve the 2025 calendar as amended? Sarah moves, Mike second, all in favor? Okay. Very good. Next item, discuss and consider action on a reconstitution of the Pedestrian Safety Advisory Committee. So no materials to discuss here other than to update you all on where all that is. So there's been renewed public interest in expanding and building on our pedestrian and cycling infrastructure in town. We've done a lot of work on that, but there are a number of groups in town in different places that would like us to build more sidewalks. And right now, most of the inquiries come from a group of parents that are at Oxridge, and they're very interested in sidewalks on Mansfield between the entrance to Oxridge north up to Pembroke, which is a street that's not too far, and then south, which is a bit further, down to Middlesex, where Highland Farms is. And so they've asked us to try to prioritize an investment in sidewalks along that road. Before I get to that, you'll recall that I mentioned before this Pedestrian Infrastructure Advisory Committee that was chartered in 2015 to go out and take a look at all of this. They came back with a very large report that addressed 3 areas: sidewalks, cycling, and bike paths, if you will, and pedestrian crosswalks. So I think that was a good report, and I applaud everyone who worked on that. One of the challenges with that report was that the recommendations were made without kind of many filters on them. And by filters, I mean, for example, I think they proposed 115 different crosswalks in town. But if you talk to police and other traffic professionals, there's a consensus in that community that having crosswalks between 2 areas where there are no sidewalks is not advised, and that a proliferation of what they call unprotected crosswalks is also not a good idea, simply because by putting the crosswalk there, it encourages people to think, well, it must be safe, it's a crosswalk, and then for them to just walk out to the street assuming that, yes, by law, those cars must stop. But there's a view in the police and traffic community that is those can be unsafe. And so that's an example of the recommendations that were made in this report as sort of being not filtered in terms of what's either feasible or prudent, if you will, in terms of crosswalks, or feasible in terms of sidewalks, because it's one thing to say, oh, let's put in a sidewalk here next to this road on all this property that's owned by the town, and we can just put the sidewalk in. That's easy. In most cases here where we've not put in sidewalks, there's either a topography challenge because there's sloped property, there are trees, 100, 200-year-old stone walls, or private property owners who own that property and from whom we must have an easement to build that sidewalk. And so in many cases where sidewalks were recommended, we weren't able to follow through simply because those are very challenging places to put sidewalks. So what I think we need to do, though, is figure out how to get to yes on some of this. It'll require that we look at building sidewalks where it is not going to be easy to do that. Mansfield is an example. That's a state road. The state's got some requirements that we will start to address as part of a design process, but that's going to take some time. On Oxridge up to Pembroke, where they want to build a sidewalk, that's got some real topography challenges because the land slopes up like this, and figuring out how to get that done with minimal sort of disturbing of all that is not going to be something that we can just snap our fingers and do. So the question is what do we do to move forward? I met with Ed Gentile a few times on all this. I think what this starts with is trying to take particular areas and say, all right, let's do some surveys to get our minds around what sidewalk is required, what the private ownership of the land looks like, what the state requirements are in this area, what are some of the barriers like trees, walls, private residences, all of that, and just take stock to say, to build a sidewalk here, what would be required. I think one of the other challenges we have is how do we actually prioritize some of these sidewalks? Because right now we're hearing from Oxridge parents, but that's because we haven't really put out a notice to everybody that says we're interested in improving pedestrian infrastructure. There may be a lot of other places in town that would also like to have sidewalks, and I think it would be imprudent to just say, well, we've heard from this group, therefore we're going to move forward with that sidewalk, without giving other residents in town a chance to say, hey, we want to raise our hands, we'd like sidewalks too.
There are several groups that have been clamoring for years.
There are a ton of groups out there, and I want to listen to all of them. I think, though, we need to prioritize out of all those requests where we're going to focus our attention first. And it'll be up against a budget. How much do we want to spend? We spend about $500,000 a year, ebbs and flows, but basically on new sidewalks and repair of existing sidewalks. How much more do we want to spend over the course of time as we build our pedestrian infrastructure? Is it $1 million a year? Is it $3 million a year? Is it $10 million a year? I don't know, but we collectively need to just get our minds around how much do we want to spend on this, and then how are we going to get input in terms of the hot spots in town where folks might like sidewalks, and then how do we as a board prioritize that? My last comment on, if we're going to reconstitute the committee, I don't want an open-ended committee that would come up with unfiltered recommendations. I think we would need to, as a board, articulate the principles as to how we want to prioritize. I think safety is first. I think use would be second. We don't want to build sidewalks that are in nice places where hardly anyone is going to use them.
Exactly.
And then we need to, once those principles are in place, maybe get the right group together, paired with a professional consultant that would help them get to ideas that would be both feasible and recommended by professionals. But I'm not quite ready to recommend that yet.
I wonder if,
Comments?
I'm sorry.
Please.
I wonder if a consultant or there are professionals around that create almost a rating system, if you will. If you get 3 points for X amount of people in a given period that you think will use this sidewalk, and an extra point if they happen to be minors or versus recreators or something like that. So
Yep.
you can almost say like, all right, well, you know, everything above the 50-point threshold should be something we immediately look at and or some sort of objective
Yeah,
statement.
I love that. I think a professional would absolutely help us do that. According to Ed, there are consultants out there who have this expertise and could assist us in exactly the way you're talking about. That's a great thought. Sarah?
So I have two concerns. I've been, this is a topic that is somewhat very near and dear to my heart. I think we have had some groups in the past who have had some incredibly strong, reasoned approaches, but we've not been able to or not been able to address some of the issues that have come up because they're state roads. And I would challenge us to not stop. I would challenge us to continue to see if we can address these issues. I think we do need to prioritize, whether it's schools. I think we need to look at trains. We have a lot of people that walk at night. Another issue I would like to bring up is lighting. We have sidewalks and crosswalks that are lovely when it is the middle of the day. And when it is nighttime, you get people coming off the trains or going to the trains in the morning. We have a lot of folks in this town that walk. They're dangerous.
Yeah, we should look at all that. I would say that Representative Tracy Mara and Senator Bob Duff have both recently engaged on this topic with regard to pedestrian infrastructure for Darien, and both are willing to help. My experience in dealing with state elected officials is that they're helpful at one level, but at another level, the real stop we need to make is Connecticut Department of Transportation.
Exactly.
They can't change their rules because an elected official told them to.
Exactly.
And so I think, again, talking to Ed about this today, I think as a board, we ought to do a few things. One is think up a set of principles that will help guide us on some of the decision making. I'd like Ed to come up with a set of consultants out there, just a list of those, and kind of who he might recommend who could assist us with something like this. And really just sketch out a project scope. So if we were to launch into an effort like this, how would this project get started? And how could we actually launch into an effort to try to improve pedestrian infrastructure? I think gathering, kind of to your point, all the different things that are going on in town, whether it's not just sidewalks at Ox Ridge, it's lighting on existing sidewalks, it's train infrastructure sidewalks, it's all of that. And to figure out a way to gather all that up and then go through a process, a transparent, open process that says, this is how we're going to prioritize these investments. I think if we do that, and it's synced up with professionals so that it's all both safe and feasible, we can make some real progress on this.
I think we can. I think we just need to look at the things that are important, the preschools, the schools, trains, things that are reasons if people are walking.
Then the last thing I would say about the state roads, if this were easy, it would all have been done yesterday, but what I want to focus on is say, look, yes, it's a state road, but we're going to get the state officials. They will come and take a look at this. We will have discussions with them. We will find out exactly what their requirements are. We'll back design a process that we think works, put a number on it, and then put it to a vote. But I won't let the fact that it's a state road hold
Good.
us back. But I want everybody to be eyes open about that process. That takes time. If
Yes.
we call them, it's going to take some time to get them here. We have to listen to their concerns because they have their own requirements. But we shouldn't let that stop us. I just want everybody to accept that it's going to take some time to sort through this. And at some point, we do need to have the budget discussion. Again, is this twice as much as we're spending or 10 times as much as we're spending? Those are all fair questions to ask, and I think responsible ones to ask.
I support the reconstitution of the pedestrian safety advisory committee.
I don't think we need to come up with what we're asking to reconstitute. I think it's a mistake to get random citizens with no expertise and no filter.
Okay, well, this
about what
was
they're
on the
doing.
agenda.
Oh, no, I get that.
Okay.
It says consider action on reconstitution.
Okay.
So my recommendation is, I'd like to come back and have another discussion about this as to what would help us. Because if I think about this in the context of what problem are we trying to solve, we're trying to get professional expertise to help us sort through this. We're trying to figure out a way to put a committee to work. And it's almost not just constituting the committee for its own sake, but to say, here's the problem that we're trying to solve. And the question is a reconstituted committee the best way to solve that problem? It may in fact be, but I don't know the answer to that question. I can't say for sure.
If we do reconstitute the committee, perhaps we can get those wonderful poll workers who have been doing such a great job. They'll be looking for something to do in a couple of days. They seem to be terribly talented.
I might give them like a week to rest, but by gosh, we're going to put them right to work. So, Monica.
So I like the idea. I think this has been a discussion point for a while.
Yep.
I think that the board would benefit from a consultant helping us identify the principles. I'm not sure that I personally am comfortable trying to map out.
Safety and use are the only ones I can think of. I think you're exactly right about that. They'll have a better list.
They'll cut down on the time.
Yeah.
Right.
They could also maybe help us identify if we were to pull together a citizen committee to assist with this. That's great. What would they do?
Right.
I mean, is it identifying projects? Is it demonstrating public need? It doesn't sound like that's a good use of committee time, but let's work with a professional to help us answer the question, what's the best way to get citizen engagement on this? Okay, so what I'll commit to is at the next meeting, I'll work with Ed to identify a set of consultants that we might consider. I'll try to call up some on the phone to see if they could help us specifically on the points that we've raised here. And either at that meeting have a set that we might vote on to bring in to even interview for this. I'll also try to just put together a little outline of, again, what problem we're trying to solve and what the opportunity is, and some key decisions we'll need to make, and I'll commit to have that in the next meeting. Is that all right?
Mm-hmm.
Sounds
Great
good.
idea.
Okay, very good. All right, so public should be aware we are moving forward on pedestrian infrastructure. Give us some time, but I think we can get this right and have an answer that over time people will be very satisfied with. Okay, that is it for new business. Transfers. Discuss and take action on a request to transfer $13,500 to police professional services for promotional testing. The extremely patient Captain Andrew Mastriani. Captain, please.
Good evening. Yes, this transfer is to fund the sergeant promotional examination process. If you're not aware, we had a patrol sergeant retire September 1st. The police commission did approve to fill this vacancy. We have about 15 officers that are interested in taking the exam. And we're going to be utilizing our long-standing testing vendor company, BadgeQuest. We don't have the funds available in our professional services account just because when the budget was put together last year, it wasn't projected that we'd have a patrol sergeant vacancy. The account that we're looking to seek the funding from, which is our patrol full-time salary account, we have plenty of funding due to staffing shortages, resulting in unspent salaries.
Captain, is this the same organization you've used for such things in the past, and are they having to sort of develop a test from scratch, or is this?
We've been using BadgeQuest for probably the past decade.
Okay,
for
so
testing.
And so is this a ton of work, or is the sergeant's exam, doesn't that already exist? And Well, so their proposal is for Badge Quest to come in and develop an exam to give to officers for potential promotion to sergeant.
Mhm.
So this is not the first time I'm sure this has happened. Do they not already have an exam developed?
They do, but there's laws that are updated and
Okay, that's fair.
different reading material that they use, so they're not using the same
Okay.
reading material.
Okay.
Multiple agencies use the same vendor.
Questions for the captain?
Yeah, just for curiosity, is that common practice that we hire a consultant to come in?
Yes.
Oh, I love that.
Yes.
That's great, thank you. Just to keep things up.
Well, it keeps them updated.
It keeps them
and
updated and keeps things honest.
It's hard
the
to make
process.
sure you've got everything. That's why those folks are there. And if
We
you're at the
wouldn't have
back-
to worry about this issue for next fiscal year because the list would be good for 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you read the qualifications of the folks who run this operation, they've been around the block.
Yes.
So, okay.
Sure.
Questions for the captain? Thanks, gentlemen.
No, thank you.
Appreciate your patience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I'm certainly supportive of this. Could I get a motion to approve the transfer of $13,500 to fund promotional testing? Monica moves, Marcy seconds. All in favor? Okay, great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Captain. All right, review and approve minutes for October 21st, 2024, regular meeting. I read through those and didn't find anything. Anyone have any comments or edits on the minutes?
Yeah, I have,
Please.
new business. It says, discuss and take action on the reauthorization of Weed Beach and Trail project. No action was taken. The board will resume discussion of this project until EPC has reviewed the project and they receive a summary of capital. I'm guessing that this is supposed to say,
Defer this discussion.
yes.
Oh, well, either we'll resume discussion of this project once EPC has reviewed the project.
Yeah, or after.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. Other questions? or-
And I would just say, and the board receives, because it is, the they is a little.
The board receives, got it. Thank you. Other edits? Could I get a motion to approve the minutes of October 21st as edited? Mike moves, Monica seconds, all in favor? Okay. Agenda review. So we have here flood update. I have committed to get my video update, which will be 2 videos actually, given the length of the topic, done by the end of next week. So I will have that for everybody to watch. It'll provide an update on our 2 flooding projects. Not just that, but it's going to provide an overview of where and why we've had flooding in town, how we prioritized and developed our criteria for flood projects, and how we picked these 2 and didn't pick others. And so it should be a pretty complete update as to where we are on that. What I would almost propose is let's watch that when I'm done. If you'd like a further technical update from Craig or any of the other experts that have focused on this, I would invite that. So just let's take a look at that summary, and if we need more, I will set that up. Beautification Commission, so that'll be on the next agenda. They sent me a financial estimate of the plantings that they were coming up with, and I'd asked them to attach an annual kind of maintenance cost or effort associated with that. It doesn't look outrageous at all, but it doesn't have a proposal around fundraising or any things that we'd kind of talked about with them before. So I'm going to go back to them, check that one more time, and then that will be on our next agenda to consider. So is there anything else to add to agenda review? Please.
I have been thinking a lot about our discussion regarding the Weed Beach project. I am appreciative that this is being moved more towards the capital review for the budget process, which I think makes sense. I would like to, if we have a project that is $500,000, $750,000, million, multiple millions, and it's off budget cycle, I would like some kind of a process in place where the Board of Selectmen is brought into the conversation, so that we're not hearing about it on a Thursday where we would need to vote or discuss or take action on it 4 days later.
Yeah.
I would love to set up some kind of process. It's not fair to the volunteers that are putting these things together. They're working really hard. They're probably planning and thinking, okay, if we get the approval to this date, then Board of Finance can go. Having said on HHR, I understand it, and that's how the timeline works. And these are all volunteers, and we are too. But I want to be able to make sure that we make the most informed decisions and that we're involved in the conversations and that we can all be on the same page.
Yeah. So I think that's an excellent suggestion, and I think if we can simply assure that every time one of those projects comes up, that we follow that process and that there's ample advance warning that that'll come up. I think that's a good point. We had kind of a perfect storm with the Wheat Beach project. I mean, the fact is that we had a complete presentation on that. We examined that 9 ways to Sunday. We looked at it. In fact, we were going to vote to approve it had those bids been anywhere close to what they thought they were. The only reason that that stopped was the bids came to us right at the moment the Board of Finance was cutting $2 million out of the Board of Education budget, and there was a collective view that now is the wrong time to proceed with a project where we were surprised and caught off guard by the cost of that project. And let's go and take another look at all this. And they did. And when they came back to us, what they were presenting was not the entire project again, because simply that we'd already talked about it at considerable length. What they came in was to present an answer to the question we posed, which was, is there an opportunity to scale this project back? And they were prepared to do that. But your point's well taken. Maybe it had been a while since we had talked about the project and we needed kind of a refresher. Some other people had kind of said the same things. I'm not saying that that was not a fair point. It was. But when this came up, I didn't forecast that we would need to have a fully fresh look at that project. So I don't want how Wheat Beach turned out to be emblematic of somehow we've fallen down in process. We don't do that, because I'm in complete agreement with you. We never want that to happen.
No, it's. I think I want to make sure that going forward, if we have something that's off cycle, that we're all kind of brought in, so that making sure that there is no surprises, no one's cut off guard. That's all. It's not I'm not using them as an example. It's just going forward. Even the fire truck tonight, that's higher than expected. There's no. Not pointing at any one thing. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Well, and that's part of the reason I wanted to table the fire truck discussion, because I could see that train coming, right? Anything that's a surprise, we collectively need to take a step back and take another look. So I think I can safely commit to all that. I think we're all in agreement that that's collectively what we want to do. So unless you want to see a policy codified, I don't know that it needs to be on agenda review, but we could definitely.
I mean, I think it's great that we all agree. I think that needs to get.
What would you like to see?
Well, I don't know. I think it's a way we have to talk now to all the boards and commissions. I think we need to go and talk with all the, committees that are managing the ones and that would come forward. They need to understand that it's not just hey, submit it. You know what I mean? And
That's fair. Would you be willing, if we were going to put this on agenda review at a Board of Selectmen meeting of your choosing, could you maybe prepare a set of principles that we would like everyone to follow on that? And let's just discuss that.
I'd be happy to.
Fair?
That's a great idea.
Okay. Whenever you're ready.
It's agenda review item because we're discussing about the process of agendas and how they come up and how, with regard to those specific type of items, how that gets on to our agenda and the timing. So a conversation on how we do that and how things come forward in a timely, sufficiently timely basis.
Yeah, I mean, look,
you can entitle that "No Surprises."
Well,
how do we get to
look,
no surprises?
we're volunteers, right? And the folks that are doing this, they're volunteers also. So, they have worked very hard on these projects. So my intent is not pointing out anybody. It's just to make sure that everyone's.
Well, but to your point about other commissions, if the fire commission had been, say, apprised of a policy like that, they would have looked at that number. And one of the points that we could put in there is that, look, you guys are coming to us with something that is going to be materially different in terms of cost forecast. This is what needs to happen, right? They would have looked at that and said, oh, we are not ready to go to the Board of Selectmen because according to their policy, we're not ready for prime time. So I applaud this. I think it's a great idea. If you could come up with maybe a cut at kind of how we would do that and ping a few other boards, see what they think. I think it's well worthwhile.
Okay,
I applaud that.
And
All right,
then
we'll
it could be
include
shared. Just could be shared at the beginning of the year with all of the boards.
100%. I think, the point is to make sure that things move forward, that we're all on the same page, that we're not going, stop.
And before that meeting, could we get a copy of it so it won't be a surprise? No, I'm kidding.
I don't know.
I'm teasing.
Maybe.
No, I applaud this. I think it's a great idea. I look forward to that discussion. Okay. Anything else for agenda review? Okay, our upcoming meetings, next one is Monday the 18th, it'll be a virtual meeting. And after that, December 2nd, which will be the full Board of Selectmen meeting. And then the 10th, is that Save the Town and all that? I think that's
I
right.
think it's the 9th.
9th, or whatever that Monday is.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
someplace around there.
Okay. Anything else for the good of the order?
No.
Okay, could I get a motion to adjourn? Mike moves, Marcy seconds, all in favor? Okay, we are adjourned at 8:44. Thank you, friends.